Delighted to have you with us for Content Evolution New World. And Mike, great to see you with us today, as always, co-hosting from the West Coast. Everything
My
good?
pleasure. Everything is great. I think we're having a good conversation today, and I look forward to seeing what Apple unveils on Monday.
Yeah, that's good. Just want to let folks know that we don't let note takers or bots into our group. So if you try to add that, we will remove them. It's not because we don't like you. It's just that we prefer for it to stand on its own as a recorded event. And I see Emily Shaw is with us. Hello, Emily.
Hey,
How are
good
you
to be
today?
here. I'm great, thanks.
Well, we're underway. We're recording. You see a community of people. This is our format. We have discussions with people. I know that your format is different. All formats are, designed to do what they're meant to accomplish. And a lot of people listen to it afterwards because it's the middle of the week, it's the middle of the day, and a lot of people can't be with us. But we're delighted to have you here today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
So my co-host is Mike McGuire, and
Hey, Emily.
Hey, good to see you. Is it the meat space, Mike McGuire?
Correct.
Exactly.
Just down the road from you in Redwood City.
Nice.
Yeah. So delighted to have you. And so we're going to talk first about your experiment, all right, on candy ears. You contrived, something that involved some Content Evolution members recently. And I'd like you to simply describe how did that come about and what was the experiment?
Yeah, absolutely. So also just to introduce myself, so I'm Emily Shaw, podcast producer and audio artist based in San Francisco. And I started this podcast, Candy Ears, actually just a couple of months ago. I had previously had, my various passion projects on SoundCloud, but I felt like it wasn't very easy for people to listen. It's like they kind of had to go to the website, you couldn't download it. So it's funny because I make podcasts for a living, but it was like, oh, I should start a podcast. Like it was kind of funny that occurred to me. Like, oh, that might be a good way to share my work. So basically I created this podcast, Candy Ears, and I just put all of my passion projects. It was almost like a portfolio, like here's everything I've made that's just for fun. And I really wanted to give myself permission to experiment. So I'm just like hiding my giant face from myself. Okay, there we go. I really wanted to give myself permission to like experiment, and I loved this idea of audio sketches. So I can definitely be a perfectionist, and I've spent like a year on one episode before, So with that in mind, I was like, I'm calling it audio sketches. I'm calling it experiments, so I can just make things quickly and put it up there. And I found myself curious about how I could experiment with AI tools. And so the very first one I did was, well, especially because I can create an AI version of my voice or any voice using this tool Descript. And so, that kind of sparked some curiosity for me. And so, I created some experiments with my own voice. And then I created, I found out that there was AI generated music. And so I created some experiments with AI generated music. And I was creating these different AI experiments, and that led me to be invited to the AI Salon with Kyle Shannon. And he and I just immediately hit it off and we're like, oh my God, this is so fun. Like maybe we can collaborate on something. And so he told me about the digital twins. I think they're the CE-GPTs, but I call them AI twins or digital twins. And
whatever you like, all right?
Okay, AI twins just feels more intuitive to me. And yeah, I think I just had this idea of I really love juxtaposing IRL humanity with AI creations and kind of leaning into what really feels human and what really feels or what is, digitally created. And so
I've got to go listen to it.
I think someone's unmuted.
Yeah. I'll mute across the board. Go ahead.
Great. And so honestly, I was just curious. I was like, I wonder what would happen. I wonder how similar or different the responses would be if they were generated by the AI twins or if they were spoken by the real humans live. And I thought it would be fun to have people react and kind of rate them. So that was the inspiration. And the final episode, if folks haven't heard it, I also I also use AI generated theme music to intro the episode, and I use my AI generated voice to introduce the episode. And then so it's like this is Emily AI in for Emily Shaw, so that kind of sets the tone with AI, and then we go into the edited conversation, which is oh my gosh, it's so complicated to explain. So also what I did was I had the participants read a prompt. So there's a paragraph long prompt that trains Descript to create their AI voice. So it's basically like I give Descript permission to create my voice. It's a couple sentences. And so the participants sent me these voice memos of the prompt. And then I created their AI voices. And then I came up with questions and I asked those to the AI twins, the CE GPTs, got those responses back. And then I typed those into the AI voice tool in Descript and created the AI version of their response. And then in the conversation, I asked them, so nobody had any idea what the questions were, and nobody had ever heard their voices, the AI responses either. And so I played them for folks, or no, actually, I asked people the question, got their response, then I played what the AI said, and then I got their reaction. Sorry, that was so complicated.
No, that's all right. It was actually, we were surprised at how well the combination of how we had trained kind of the chatbot part of CEGPTs,
Right.
using our interview methodology, right, to ask people the right questions, to train them, right, to sound like us, right, in terms of the way that we respond. You added the voice synthesis on
Right.
top of that, and we kind of hit uncanny valley with the voice synthesis, all right, for
Yeah.
the most part.
Yeah.
And the responses themselves, we were giving pretty good marks, right, in terms of, it's kind of authentic, right? In fact, I told you that I gave myself, and I think it was most of us gave it
Like
around
8.5.
I think
Yeah.
Mike McGuire, he was on, and he gave it a little bit lower, right, score, but most people was 8.5. I played it for my wife, and she said, Kevin sounds just like you. Why didn't you rate it higher, right? And I said,
Right.
I said, I will let you, right, have the standing higher rating because you've been listening to me for almost 50 years. So, you're the person that has better judgment of what I sound like than I do, right? So
Right.
I'll also tell you this, as an ex-NPR person, right? I started a podcast and I did an interview, and then I went in, just like I would normally do, and edited the thing and took out all the ums and the ahs and the pot. It was an NPR, and it was great, but it took 6 hours of editing, right? And I said, you know what?
That's all?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's what I'm saying is that I'm
Right.
actually pretty good, all right? And
Right.
Audio Brain, our sonic branding company in the Federation, had created music, right, for the thing earlier, right? Everything from episodes like this, or walk in, walk out music, right? If you're doing keynote addresses, blah, blah, blah. I said, I cannot imagine on a weekly basis investing that much time anymore, right? I just don't have the
Yeah.
time. And we have fallen into the format that you're experiencing right now, which is just conversations with people.
Yeah.
It's not highly
Or
edited,
sustainable. Yeah.
right? Well, I mean, we put it into a library, and it's what it needs to be for the group of people who choose to pay attention to it. It's not intended to be, a highly produced, large audience experience. I feel like what you're doing is also kind of boutique. It is, you're satisfying yourself first, all right, and then allowing other
How
people.
could you tell?
Well, yeah, I mean, and then you're letting other people say, well, if you'd like to experience what I just did here, right? Here's a gift,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And unwrap it. Is that right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I even expect it to be a gift. I hope that it is. But yeah, it's kind of like my audio sketchbook. It's like, huh, here's the thing I was playing with, like, and then
It
if
feels
people are
like that.
interested, cool. But yeah, yeah.
I mean, Mike, I mean, jump in for a second. Is that how, when you played this, is that how you felt about it? Or how did you feel about it? I shouldn't put any words in your mouth.
No, I mean, I'd say I probably come down a little bit more on that perspective you're describing, Kevin. Um, it, I felt like the synthesis of the voice was spooky, spooky good.
Spooky good.
I, and it was really interesting because afterwards, when I listened to not our recording, Kevin, but the actual episode on Candy Ears, I then felt bad. It's like, you only
Why?
gave it a 7.5, Mike. What's
Hmm.
wrong with you? And then I started arguing with myself, berating myself, went and listened to the episode again, and it it made me realize that these conversations with these exchanges with the bots, to me at least, this is probably, if any psychiatrists are listening, please call if you can help. I've been having these, that's it's like that internal argument we always have with somebody when you're dealing with a new question or a new topic. At least I do. And I found that that's probably, Emily, now that I was thinking about it, I listened to it now like 3 times. And I think it was the spooky good thing that threw me in like 7.5, right? Because then what I
Like you're kind of
focused
in
on is
reactivity mode
Mhm.
a little bit in the moment.
exactly. And it
Yeah.
was, what did I say back to you? It said, oh, well, yeah, the voice good, that synthesis, it was a little more stilted than I wanted. But I'll be honest, at that point when I was going through that process, after I finished the third listen, I was like, oh, wait a minute. She was querying our actual GPTs, right? That I somehow had forgotten that step in your process. And I realized, well, no, that is how our GPTs or my GPT sounds. I've built another one that's my own personal one that doesn't sound like that at all, because it's more of
Right.
me as opposed to Mike McGuire, part of CE. So I
Right.
think
Like
that's probably
professional
where
versus, yeah.
honestly, I think the hard grade was like, that was what was happening, where I was like, I was actually kind of stopped for a second, still kind of like, wow, that was both spooky good, and I was a little surprised. I was very surprised at the actual response, which I thought was very good, because I focused on education and things like that, which are elements of what we
Hmm.
use to program.
So maybe you answered
Whatever.
it personally, but its response was professional
Yeah,
or something like that.
Yeah.
I've been trying to wade through that for the last few days, but yes, that's probably the closest way
Interesting.
to describe it.
Yeah. I would say, without us prompting you, you asked questions that were actually the GPTs that we trained. And by the way, let me put a shout out to you. Met Kyle Shannon. The person who led the development of our interview guide was Cindy Kuhn, who is
Hmm.
Kyle's our chief generative officer for Content Evolution. Cindy is the chief media officer, but she's also a trained futurist, and she knows how to do the deep inquiries. I kind of know how to do it more ethnographically, and she knows how to do it more in terms of pulling yourself into the future, and felt pretty authentic. The questions that you were asking, even though they seemed like they were what's the meaning of life for me, was an Outer Limits Twilight Zone question, but the fact is that is pretty much what I spend my time thinking about, right? Is, what's the foundation of reality, and how does that apply to, the way that businesses actually operate or could operate better?
Right.
Rob O'Regan you're on mute here. Are you there in background, my friend?
I am here.
Okay, Rob, you were actually interviewed too, so I'm going to ask you to join for a second. What was your experience in participating in Emily's Candy Years podcast?
Yeah, it was fascinating, really, just to see the way it all played out. I agree with what a lot of you all said on the podcast itself and in these discussions here today is that, I think I was a little taken aback by it. It's just weird hearing your own, the synthetic version of your own voice. And like,
Yep.
I
I'm used
think
to it
Kyle
now.
mentioned it. It was like me on Prozac, right? It was like the really
Right.
calm, like, classroom of kindergarten kids.
I mean, someone would have to be on a lot of Prozac to sound like
Right.
that.
That's
Yeah,
right.
but I thought, my poorly spoken answer that I gave to your question when you asked it about how AI is being used to combat misinformation, and the twin generated response, I thought content wise they were very aligned.
Yeah.
It was more just kind of the surprise of hearing your voice played back like that. So yeah, I thought it was great.
Can we do an interview within an interview thing? Rob, I mean, when you, in your roles and kind of at PC over the intervening years, you may have probably had a chance to be occasion to be interviewed by another member of the media, like a radio or a TV person.
Right.
I don't know about you, but I remember the first time I was interviewed on radio. And at first it was like, hey, Mom, Dad, look, I'm actually an expert. People interview me. And yet there was no other than, oh, I should have said X or Y, right? It was that was the first time you hear your voice outside. And this was very different. I do remember that first time I was interviewed and heard my voice on radio was like, cool. This was, like I said, Emily, it was spooky good, right? Because I had no recollection. There was no prior conversation, right? The interview I had as a radio, it was
I mean,
a thing that
had you even
happened
met
in the
me
past.
before?
Huh?
I guess we were all in an email chain, but like nobody had even met me before. So
right.
It's like I did an interview
think,
with you,
Yeah, and I think to your point, Mike, about the interview process, right? It's the corollary of the digital twin response would be that if you were given a question in advance and you had time to script out the answers as articulately as you could, and then you're basically just reading, or you committed them to memory, right? It's that fully formed, edited response that was so kind of well constructed and based on kind of all the knowledge that you have in your brain, or in this case through all the source material that are fed into those GPTs.
But I'm going to point out that I don't think that it would have worked as well because Emily was a good host, all right, for the way that she was setting us up, making us comfortable, because it could have been you could have been building up a lot of acid in your stomach about, all right, well, am I going to actually say this the way that I'm supposed to, for the I didn't have any of that. And I remember when I was first went into media training, because I used to deliver media training, but then when they put me, and they said, well, you're going to be the person that's interviewed, because I changed career path. The trainer said, okay, we're going to do this Henry Kissinger style. I said, what is that? Right. And Henry Kissinger, once in a news conference said, does anybody have any questions for my answers?
Gee.
It's like, okay, no matter what they ask, right, here's what you're going to say, right? Here's how you bridge to what you want to say. And that has become really annoying, okay? And, when you see people who've been media trained who do that mechanically as opposed to doing it well. At any rate,
Can I ask a potential trade secret of Emily?
Yeah, good.
I'm curious that
that sample. I don't know if I have any trade secrets.
Well, that's no, the sample you had us each read, right, was the same thing.
Yeah.
Right. Was that based on your experience doing interviews or experience you've had kind of working with Gen AI tools that said, I need to come up with this sort of a sample to then to create the synthesized voice?
So that is the sample from Descript.
Oh,
So
I
it's
see.
literally like I can just open it right now. And so I open Descript, I go to
Ah,
AI speakers, I click new speaker, and it says
right.
create. So I'm just putting test, I click confirm, and then this pop-up comes up, train an authorized speaker, record the statement below to train your speaker and authorize its use for the best results.
Oh,
Read with a range in your voice and tone. I want Descript to create an artificial version. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's from Descript. But
gotcha.
it's kind of amazing how, I mean, it wasn't just
Yeah.
that they sounded like people, they sounded like the specific people. Like I think if I had played the
Yes.
voice and been like, who is this? People would have been able to guess who it
Yeah,
was.
we're not
Mhm.
playing
Yep.
the, pieces of the podcast for you, because go listen to the podcast.
Go listen to it.
And we're discussing why you should listen to it. Mark, you had your hand up.
I did. Thank you, Emily. I love this. I have a couple of questions here. They're fast. The first one is, my sense when I listened to this was you had speeded it up, and that it was not playing at the speed we had recorded it, but the whole thing sounded faster to me. Did you do that?
So I did not speed it up. I wonder if maybe your podcast player was at like
Maybe.
1.25 speed or something. But yeah, I didn't change that. Well, I
Okay.
did. I mean,
Well, there's compression. but
sometimes
it's
I
just-
like cut out like really long pauses, but I think if it was noticeable to
I know
you,
that, but maybe I didn't know. I often listen at a speeded up thing, and I liked it a whole lot speeded up.
Yeah.
And I thought that was a benefit, so I would suggest that as a whole thing. Second thing is, I came across just yesterday, there's a company called Eterna, and they are making these digital twins or AI twins for people who are dying, so they can be with their families forever. And one of the things that they said at the
you
beginning,
said, how's it spelled?
I think it's Aeterna. I don't know. I'd heard it on TV.
I would suspect that it probably is Eterna with an E, because it's like for eternity, but whatever, right?
I don't know. I heard it on TV, but here's what they said that intrigued me. They said they started out by having somebody read 200 sentences that were designed for affect, that were going to elicit, tears, and elicit this and elicit that, and that produced voices with much, and then they had them do the normal training. And so they think that they thought
it creeps me out, but honestly, just hearing you say that gives me like shivers, honestly, in a bad way. Like,
I think it's a good way.
I don't know.
I would
Like,
love
it's
to have my
denying
kid
that-
talk to me
Okay.
for the rest of my life. But a lot of people react negatively to this. That's why we call
right,
it
yeah.
Canny Valley. But I thought that was that if you want more affect, because that was the general criticism from the people in the podcast, was this was spot on, or this was very close in terms of content, and it was less on in terms of affect. And the interesting thing is that we don't really know our own affect. That's what Kevin's thing with Heidi demonstrated, is that we think we sound a certain way and we listen to ourselves, but that we don't, way people see us is not the way often we think people see us or hear us. Right. And so, and this gives new meaning, and this is my last point, to the word trained. Because Kevin said you were a trained, he is a trained this, and I am what was it? You were a trained speaker or some radio host, and somebody says I am a trained artist. I heard Cindy say I am a trained fine artist, or I am a trained. That's an old meaning of trained. This is now we have a whole new meaning of the word trained, which is I've been exposed to everything. I haven't been told what to do and what's better. Which was the old meaning. The old meaning of trained was this is better, and this is what a professional does. The new meaning of trained is I've been exposed to everything.
Yeah,
I've just and that's so it's a shift that I'm interested in the language.
It's less about that it's trained, it's that it's available when you need it. So I'm going to Jeremy, you have a question, and then we're going to go to the B block of our time together, because I want to give Emily some time to share her craft with us. And so thanks for that question and those thoughts, Mark. Jeremy?
Sure. This is really fascinating. I approach the AI thing mostly from the musical side, so we may have some things in common there. And I'm one of a few people in my circle of friends who has not stuck my head in the sand and just gotten totally terrified. I know some people that are really depressed about AI music, but I've been trying to learn as much as I can. And I've actually been asked to present on the topic a number of times. And I'm trying to continue to stay up to speed on stuff. But as you know, from day to day and week to week, things change. Um, the thought that I had, more of a thought, not necessarily a question, but kind of jumping off of some comments Mike had, part of my background is social media or social influence and rhetorical concerns in terms of identity. And when you're speaking to someone, you hopefully remember what you say, or maybe you remember most of what you say, and you're responsible for what you say. In these situations, what do we think of holding an AI voice that's representing me, holding them accountable for what I say? And maybe that's a bigger question. And then down the line, we may foresee that the legal.
Wait, could I ask a question on what you mean by that? So when you say holding them accountable for what I say, do you mean the AI, like that you can cross-check what someone has actually said in real life, or do you mean what the AI says would need to be accountable to you? Like, am I responsible for what my AI says?
Right. Am I responsible for what my AI says? So if my AI says something that is, maybe it's innocuous, like some stupid thing about how to make something or whatever, and I leave out a step, okay, well, maybe I left out a step. Well, what if I left out a step that was critical or dangerous or something?
Wait. Can I ask another question?
Okay, or maybe, so go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, so in this scenario, like I would imagine that I'm choosing to use my AI version of myself to accomplish some task that I'm like aware of and paying attention to and can kind of like check and correct. But it sounds like you're talking about a scenario where the AI version of myself is just kind of out in the wild doing things.
And Jeremy, you're off on a completely different topic that we could go to in depth, right?
Yeah.
On a different episode. I would say that for the purposes of this discussion, we did that because Emily's experiment was, I've already asked the AI, agent to answer the question. Now you answer the question, human, and listen to what the AI said. That allowed us to do a matching of both expression and content. Let me give you a different example. Our federation, Content Evolution, that basically is the backbone of our gatherings, is writing and posting to LinkedIn Pulse every week now. We have a collective. All of those agents are now one collection, right? And we can write together. We ask questions. But when I get that ready and I quote people and I go and say, what do you think about this, Mike McGuire? What do you think about this, person? I ask them to check their quote, all right, that's coming out of the agent to make sure that they agree with what it's saying. And I had an edit yesterday. It wasn't a big one, but we had somebody saying, nah, I'd like this taken out. Great. So that's part of the procedure. And Jeremy, I would suggest that we take that larger thought into a future.
I'm noting that, Kevin, because I do think that's, Jeremy brings up a really good topic, and I was thinking we might want to bring in somebody like our friend Derek Slater to talk about that, to engage with Jeremy, because I think that would be a good call. So I think we can.
Cool.
Got that.
Thank you for that. I want to take time now for Emily to share, all right, some of her expertise with us. And Emily, question, stop share. Do you want to share from your computer, or do you want me to share your charts from here? I do it either way.
I can try. I'm trying to remember which program like looks cleaner when I try to share something but still see people at the same time.
Well, I mean, you know what?
You know what? If you wouldn't mind sharing it, that would be great. Just so I can.
Let me see what we got.
I think it'll look a little cleaner for everyone else than if I'm like have it as the slideshow version. So it should say V2 at the end.
that it?
Yeah, great. Great. Yeah, so I'm just gonna
I can't
uh,
make it bigger because the way this is set up, I can't make it full screen. I apologize, but I can advance it when you tell me to.
okay, great. Um, so yeah, I'm gonna just share a little bit about myself and my work, and my creative process behind some of the AI experiments I've done. Kevin, it sounds like you'd like for me to not share anything about the one that we talked about, so people are motivated to
No,
actually
no, no.
check it
I
out.
mean,
But I can share
no,
other ones.
you can do anything you want to do. I'm just saying that I'm encouraging people to actually listen to the podcast, but you can say
Yeah.
more. Absolutely.
Okay, cool. I'll see what I feel like doing.
Please, spoilers, please.
Cool. Yeah, so we can go on to the next slide.
All right.
Yeah, so I'm just going to share a little bit about myself, my inspiration and process, share a couple samples, and then share how I made it, and we can have some time for Q&A. So we can go to the next slide. I'm Emily Shaw. I already introduced myself, so we can go to the next slide. But this is just a little bit about the work that I do for my business. So I partner with brands and organizations to create podcasts and also audio products. So sometimes that could be like a really creative audio ad. And these are some of the folks that I've worked with. Currently, I'm having a lot of fun working with YouTube on their trends podcast. So we look at the little known stories behind the biggest YouTube trends. I've also worked with Headspace. I'm working with the World Peace Foundation. So if any of you, I would love to continue to exist as a business. So if any of you know anyone who's interested in these services, feel free to spread the word. The business side of things helps support my audio art, which has no financial pressure on it. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, and so I offer workshops, consulting, creative development, and end-to-end white label production for podcasts. And yeah, I already talked about some project highlights, so we can go to next slide. Yeah, and like I mentioned, I have a ton of fun doing passion projects. So you can see this photo on the left, Sounds of Comfort During Quarantine. That was an experiment I made, honestly, in like March, April 2020, when lockdown was just beginning. I had, similar to this recent project, I had people, so instead of people sending me prompts so that I could train their AI voices, I had people send me recordings of sounds of comfort during quarantine. And I compiled these into the sound collage with pieces from all over the world, like Italy, South Korea, all over the US. And then this middle photo is from my very first podcast, Cozy Boat. So I interviewed musicians in an inflatable boat filled with pillows and twinkly lights in this indie recording studio in San Francisco. And this was just a really fun way for me to kind of find my creative voice and what I'm interested in. So I, do an hour and a half interview and then edit it into like a 10-minute, audio portrait of this artist with their music. And my most recent project is Candy Ears, which is, yeah, kind of like my audio sketchbook, my portfolio, a way to celebrate play and experimentation. Okay, so we can go to the next slide. So my process is really based on curiosity. That's something I've learned about myself as a creative person, is that I get more excited by the question, I wonder what will happen if, than I do about like the drive to perfectly do like a set, like an already established way that things are supposed to be done. So I learned that once I took a watercolor class, and there was one watercolor class where it was like, oh, here are tools where you can make, it was like a night sky, like you can, contrast the colors like this, and you can like shake the paintbrush on it like this. And that was super fun because oh, what happens if I use blue, painter's tape? And what happens if I do this? And then I took another watercolor class that was about like how to accurately draw flowers. And it was so boring to me. I was like, why would I want it? It's like, I could take a picture of a flower. I could look at someone else can draw the flower. Like, so that was just something I learned about myself creatively. So for my audio projects, I'm often driven by, I wonder what it would sound like if I did this. I wonder what would happen if I did that. And then specifically with AI, I really like emphasize like being transparent and trying to understand what AI can do. And then also really leaning into what makes us human, and then juxtaposing that to try to have like the biggest contrast. And just process this experience that we're all going through of like everything's moving so fast. And I know for me, it's like, I feel like I can't really keep up. And so I feel like making these projects is a way for me to kind of slow things down. And even in the process of making it, I'm talking with other humans like, oh, this is what it can do. How do you feel? How do I feel? What do we think about that? Which is helpful. So we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so I'm just going to share a couple examples. And for these, I will actually share my screen so that I can play it. So let's see, share screen. Okay. I want to make sure it shares sound. Great. Okay,
exactly.
So, perfect. So
gotta hit all those controls.
I know. Okay, so this is the very first AI experiment that I made for my podcast. It's 30 seconds long. And basically I was trying to, again, like really think about what feels really human and then juxtapose that with an AI voice. I actually couldn't create an AI voice for the recording because I don't know that person. I found this recording. It's from the 1940s. Basically, I was like, what feels really human? I was like, oh, like an archival recording, you know? So I found this recording from the 1940s. It was right after the Pearl Harbor attack. You know, basically trying to find something that I could have permission to use. And so I found this recording. And I wished that I could create an AI version of the person's voice, but I couldn't because I don't have permission. I couldn't get them to read the prompt. So I just used my own voice. But here is that.
I am Carol Kiesling.
I am
Carol
Kiesling, a cashier in a university
bookstore. On December 7th last, I was happy.
I was happy.
The next 2 days also found me in my usual frame of mind, although it did seem strange that I was not experiencing the same feelings as most of my friends.
Although it did seem strange that I was not
Experiencing
the same feelings as most of my friends. The same feelings as most of my friends. Not until a few days later did the full impact of Pearl Harbor
strike me.
Yeah, so that was just an example of kind of playing with that idea. And fun fact, the reason that I initially had my own voice kind of going for just certain words at a time was because I didn't have like the higher tier version of Descript. And so it put the word gibber there because it wanted me to pay more money. So I just kind of used that as a creative constraint. And yeah, so I can just, I'll share one more. Actually, I'll share a couple more, but they're short. So this one was playing with the idea of kind of playing with this idea of this AI prompt, right? You read this prompt to train your voice and it's like your voice, but I'm like, but there's so many like different types of voice that I could have. And I kind of wanted to see how many voices, how many AI versions of my voice I could create. So I played with like, what happens if I sing the prompt? What happens if I shout the prompt from far away? What happens if I say it really high, really low? What happens if I whisper it really closely? And so, you know, or take a deep breath and say it all in one take. So again, this was just like a fun way to try to understand, yeah, just experiment and be curious about what it would sound like. So what I did was I recorded all these things and then I edited it all together so that this is what the whole prompt is, but it's like the different patchwork of recordings. Some are actual recordings, some are the AI voices.
I want Descript to create an artificial version of my voice
that I can use to create speech that sounds like me.
I am training my voice by reading the following statement. Imagine a big blue ball spinning in space.
That's our Earth. On it, there are tall mountains.
Deep oceans and huge forests with animals.
In cities, people talk, play, and work.
We all have different voices. Some people speak softly,
while others are loud.
Every day, we tell stories,
ask questions, and share jokes.
Something that was interesting about this one was I kind of like that it ends with that desperate breath because I feel like it really emphasizes like I'm a human being and I need to breathe air. And then in there are also like AI breaths, which are just like I feel like philosophically a funny thing to me. So I'm going to share one more that's a little bit longer. But don't worry, it's 3 minutes and 25 seconds. So this is a clip from a similar episode to what I did with the collab folks. And basically I had Charlie Harding, who's a music journalist and a musician and the host of a really great podcast called Switched on Pop, all about pop music. I created insane AI, like insane, absurd podcast theme songs using the AI tool Suno AI. And then I was curious, first of all, I was curious what they would sound like, or what they would be. And then I was curious how he would react to them. And also what would happen if I asked him to remix one live as a human being. So this is just a short clip from that episode. Okay, so we're now at the final prompt and song. This one is a podcast theme song for a comedy podcast hosted by 6-month-old babies.
It's a great idea.
And this song is called Baby Laughs.
We're here to make you smile. 6 months old and we're rocking the mic. Oh yeah, we may true and babble, but don't you underestimate the comedic genius that we demonstrate. Baby laughs, baby giggles, we're the cutest on the air. Tune in every weekend, we'll keep you laughing, we swear. Funny voices, silly sounds will bring joy to your day. So join us on this podcast, come and play. Ooh, yeah.
All right. That's a bop. That is a baby bop.
You have kids,
I
you have little kids, right?
I do have little kids. I take issue with the idea of 6-month-old babies talking and singing. I think the better podcast is actually 6-month-olds hosting a podcast. And what do they say to each other? How do they interact? I think it would take a lot of editing, but I think that would be comedy gold. Now, but this song has the catchiest hook. That chorus is good. The lyrics suck, but they're babies, so they get a pass. But the melody was great, and there was the right amount of repetition. I don't know why babies are into sort of like upbeat trap R&B, but the melody, the hook was good, and I feel like you don't actually have to write good lyrics to have a hit song. You just have to have a catchy, memorable melody, and I think that this song, Baby Laughs, achieves that.
Awesome. Well, I love that the tone has shifted and now you're actually stoked about one of the songs. That's awesome. So now we have arrived at the next part of this podcast experiment, which is I would love for you to choose one of these podcast theme songs that you will create a remix of, make a better version of live right now. I'll give you more than 5 seconds. You can have as much time as you are available right now.
Oh, God. All right, I'll try Basement Warriors.
Okay.
2 dudes in a basement, mic in hand, talking about life and things they don't understand. Breaking it down, keeping it real, sharing thoughts and trying to make a deal. Basement Warriors, podcast kings, talking about everything, no strings. Diving deep, never gonna hold you back. Basement Warriors, we got your back, oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's enough examples. So now we can go to Q&A and talk about anything folks would like.
That's good. Emily, I have a question. I said, go watch it. Pick one of our, segments inside the podcast, the one that you like the best, Cindy, Kevin, Mike, Rob, and, just play it so everybody has it.
Yeah.
As a preview, that they kind of going, oh, I want to listen to the whole thing.
Thankfully, I totally prepared that. So it'll just be 1 second.
Cool.
1 sec.
You're going to ask Emily to pick her favorite with all of us here on
It's not my favorite. Well, I love all my children the same. This is just
one your podcast children. Oh, your podcast children.
I completely randomly, I closed my
Rando.
eyes when I okay. So here. So this one was Kyle Shannon. So this clip is 3.5 minutes long. So your question is, do you think that AI friend simulations will replace real human friends? If so, what value, if any, is there to engaging with the messiness of human relationships? Just a little easy question.
Yeah, really. Do I? So it's effectively, do I think digital twins are going to replace humans? The short answer is no. I
or
think,
not digital twins, more AI friend simulation. So it could be like
AI
the movie Her, where it's created.
Yeah, exactly. AI companionship. I think for some people, it will replace human friends, or maybe it might be they will have relationships where they otherwise didn't have relationships. So I think it will augment, their sense of being connected to the world. So yes, the answer is no. I don't think it will replace human relationships, but I think these kind of relationships will be commonplace, and it'll counterintuitively push people into more deeply engaged relationships. With people.
Humans?
Yes.
Oh, okay. And then that second part of the question, what value is there to engaging with the messiness of human relationships? If any.
I think the value of humanity, I feel, goes up in a synthetic world. Humans are beautiful, right? And there's an unexpectedness and a serendipity about humans that I think maybe we lose with these entities. So I think it's the authenticity of it. I think the value of authenticity goes off the charts, becomes incredibly important. And so it's not that these entities replace that. It's just that when I have a real human interaction, the value of it will be dramatically higher because I can compare it to this other thing.
Okay, let's hear it.
AI friend simulations offer convenience and companionship, but can't replace the depth of human relationships. The messiness of human interactions brings authenticity, emotional depth, and opportunities for growth through conflict and resolution. Shared experiences and mutual support create genuine connections that AI can't fully replicate. Engaging with human relationships enriches our lives, fostering empathy and trust. While AI can enhance social interactions, the unique value of human connection remains irreplaceable. The complexities of real friendships are essential for emotional well-being and personal development.
So what do you think, Kyle? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rank that?
I think 8.5 feels right to me. I think the essence of it is right. It's way too formal. One of the things that I've noticed about the more dynamic a human is in life, like I talk loud and fast and up and down, the further the digital twin seems, because it kind of normalizes everything. It's like Prozac. It's digital Prozac. And then the language was very formal. I think like the essence of what it said felt very much like my message, but the formality of the language, like it felt a bit more like a Kevin Clark answer than a Kyle Shannon answer.
Yeah, interesting.
So Emily, the Prozac, the parametric Prozac is very visible right there on the chart. When it was speaking, it was much more compressed.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right, and
I
so
was like this, and then
you can
like,
see right
yeah.
where that you can visually see where the bot was speaking.
Yeah, that's a good point. I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, well, I'm just synesthesia at work.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, questions. All right. It was fun, to do this. It was fun to listen to.
Oh, and actually, one other thing I'll say is,
yeah, go ahead, Tim, jump in and add a thought, Emily, and then Tim.
So, I just wanted to go to the last slide of my presentation.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Just because
Tim,
it has
standby.
like my contact info and stuff, so that people can take a screenshot if you want to keep in touch. Yeah. So, if you wouldn't mind just sharing.
Let's share this.
Very last slide.
Hold on. It isn't letting me advance yet. Same feelings, theme songs.
Oh, I actually do have
Look at
Well,
all this content.
There's more stuff in there, but I thought it'd be fun to do a Q&A.
There it is.
But yeah, please, I love to connect with folks on LinkedIn. Like, feel free to shoot me an email. Here's my website. Yeah, so I just wanted to share that.
Okay, so I'll put that into, oops, I got to capture the whole thing. I'll put that into our chat so that it's persistent. Excellent. Tim.
So the Prozac type commentary is interesting because I've looked at this in the context of it's the same. AI has basically no emotion. And that was a great perspective because when you actually look at a lot of the AI characterizations, it follows a script that really has less to do with or more to do with content as opposed to emote, right? And that's one of the big problems that I actually think we're going to have going forward with a lot of these types of quote unquote dualities, because how, I've talked to a couple of major AI researchers on this, and their perspective is you can eventually teach this, but you can't teach it the exact emotions or the exact kind of commentary or feelings it's going to come from this type of thing. And another friend of mine, Dave Weiner, has been doing a lot of interesting stuff with visuals in the same context. And while he can create great visuals, they all look the same. They all have the same kind of footprint from the standpoint of the way the designs work and I noticed when I studied them more and more, each image is almost perfect. There's no, it's like it's all geometry, There's no what I would call creative character that expands it to say that this is an artist presenting a real vision of what they see, as opposed to AI giving you all these little characters. And I just wonder about that in the context of this going forward. Is if it's difficult or potentially even impossible for an AI character to have emotion, are we going to mainly only have these kind of dual personalities in these kind of scenarios, being much more rigid and strict in the context of just delivering data?
Yeah.
And I just wonder about that because in humanity, it's I happen to be I don't know if you guys know who Phil Rosenthal is, he does Somebody Feeds Phil. If you've never watched his show on TV, you should watch it. It's on Netflix. But he goes all around the world and eats, and he's the guy that he produced Somebody Loves Raymond. Incredibly.
He's like the frumpy Anthony Bourdain.
Yeah, that's a great show. We love that show.
In fact, actually, that's anyway. He was in San Jose last night. I went to his Q&A thing. He was the funniest guy, had greatest personality, and the way he communicated was so great in emotion. And thinking about that in the context of what you said, I don't know how AI duplicates that.
Well, you want to hear something interesting?
Go ahead.
Well, okay, so just to share more like IRL human things, briefly, because I know we're low on time. Right after we recorded this experiment, I found myself desiring to go just be in a coffee shop, which I don't normally do. Like, I normally work from my home office. I just felt like being around people. And I went to this coffee shop and I had printed out the transcript and I was kind of going through and highlighting. And there was this music playing and it was really distinctive to me. And I ended up talking to the person next to me and being like, do you want to try to guess what the name of this playlist is? Like, it's so distinctive. I wonder if we can guess what the Spotify playlist is called. And so she and I started guessing. And then this guy next to her, we invited him in and he started guessing with us. And then this other guy turned around at a table and he started guessing. And it was so fun. We were writing it all down. I went to the cashier, we asked, and then it was oh, surprise, this is what it was. And we ended up having a 2-hour conversation, complete strangers. And I think there was, and like we were talking about AI and we were talking about what makes us human. I think there was something about working on this that was making me like think about like the intangible things that AI can or can't do. And one thing we talked about was everything that's not communicated verbally. Like these models are trained on language, but what about when you make eye contact with someone from across the room and smile at them? What about the hug, like hugging someone that you care about, you know?
Yeah.
There's all the context and years of context. You know, it's like, how could you ever train an AI about that? And I don't know. Why
But
would
you
you want
can,
to?
once they start to have all the human senses available as inputs, right, and outputs, right? Right now, we don't have a lot of, systems that smell or taste or so on and so forth. But as I put in the chat, the work that's being done at the MIT Media Lab Affect Lab is working on the boundaries, pushing the boundaries of all that sensory apparatus. We do the same thing in, the sense mapping practice and content evolution, where to craft an experience and engagement, we write something that looks like music, where what's happening in the head is in the G clef and all of the sensory information is playing out over time in the bass clef, right? So, you end up with a, mapping of how do you create and how do you imprint and then retrieve an experience that's fully human, right? Right now, we don't have the ability to do fully human in these systems because they're not taking in all the information that you're talking about, Emily. I haven't ever met you. I would know you better if I had been in your presence and there was pheromone exchange, right? Which is impossible to do with these systems at the moment. Do I think it will happen? Yeah, we think that that's going to be possible, right? That you will be able to do that kind of thing, but you'll have to have some kind of a molecular tower nearby to synthesize what's taking place on your side, all right, of the conversation and what's happening on this side to create, that complete experience. Tim, so that's kind of what I'm thinking. However,
oh man, with 1 minute left.
I just want to inject in that last minute the word yet, because a lot of people say we can't do this. Will we ever do this? I think the most important word is yet.
We're going to be able to do it. And
I think maybe the most important word is why.
Yeah.
Or,
well, that's
you know what I mean?
Exactly, Emily, because that was Tim was speaking. And this is what I think was part of the issue when I was going back and listening to your experiment. Was, as I think we all said this, right? Rob did, I did, and Mr. Prozac Nation, Kyle, mentioned. I think that notion that it was stilted, right? It's not my voice. It's my physical audio signal, put it on a waveform voice that's pretty close. But that lack of what we might say, the internal, the voice, if you will. Part to your question, why I've struggled with that initially when I was building these GPTs. It's like, well, that's close to Mark, but it's not his voice. In terms of, again, the text feedback from the AI engine. And that was then I struggled with that. And then I got to what you just said, which is why. Why do I need to have that complete or as complete as possible experience of Mike McGuire when I'm on a virtual? I want to understand what his POV is, right? And part of what makes the meet space still attractive to most of us is that context, right? Is that, as you were saying, that eye contact across the room, the connection that's unspoken, and that then leads to conversation and exchanges that last 2 hours, right? But I think that's another topic for another discussion.
So Emily, the last 60 seconds is yours. And by the way, I put, can the AI do stand up? Right, is one of my.
There are a lot of stand-up shows that incorporate it,
but they're not good, right?
Right.
So it is.
Be pretty
I'm
funny.
removing myself. Right, it is your time. Go.
Okay, I'm gonna spend. Honestly, I feel like we could do a 60-second meditation. So I'm gonna Yeah, that seems kind of cool. Let's take however many seconds are left. I just put the link to Candy Ears in the chat, and we can just kind of be here. And you know. Okay, now it feels awkward to be in a Zoom meeting. I feel like if we were here in real life, maybe it would feel different.
Well, that again, so
less than like 5 seconds, but
Emily, you now understand why I'm not doing experience design as much as designing presence. I'm trying to work on designing presence. And so that was a great example of that. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, well, thank
Thanks,
you so much
guys.
for having
Take
me.
care.
And yeah, don't be a stranger, guys. Looking forward to continue the conversation.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.
Bye.
We'll talk again soon. And be
Awesome.
intentional. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.